Dr. Hovind, I love your doctoral thesis. I've torn it to pieces with house and gaffle. I can't remember when I last pissed myself laughing. It's a good thing the thesis mopped the piss off the floor.
Welcome to part 19 of this read-through and peer review of Kent Hovind's doctoral dissertation, which was published on wikileaks.org on December 9th, 2009. If you have not yet seen the first parts of this series, then I recommend that you go back and see those first, as I will be starting off in this episode exactly where I left off in the last. In the last episode, Kent gave us a truly awesome and irrelevant character assassination of Erasmus Darwin. In this episode, Kent starts with a gloat. I think it is not a coincidence that people who are atheists or evolutionists frequently have a wicked lifestyle, or at least a lifestyle against the plain teachings of the Bible. Therefore, evolution is an easy way for them to justify their lifestyle. So, Kent, exactly how do you explain why you are at present rotting in jail? Explain to me, Ted Haggard, and all those other televangelists who've had to quit and apologise to their flock amid sex scandals and fraud allegations. Explain to us all Catholic priest tampering with children. And explain to me the cover-up that went to cover up such heinous crimes. You see, I'm sure every last one of them sought forgiveness from their imaginary friend in the sky, and I'm quite sure as well that they received it. But maybe as a convicted fraudster, you can shed some light on what the justification was, and whether or not it was evolution. Kent continues. The problem is one of philosophy, not one of science. They don't want there to be a God because of their wicked lifestyle. That is their real problem. Yes, Kent, because seeking forgiveness from your victims is so much easier than apologizing to an imaginary friend in the sky who is going to forgive you anyway, because he says that if you ask for forgiveness, then you'll receive it. What a complete load of bollocks. Kent goes on. The next man with an influential part in this history of evolution was Jean-Baptiste de Lamarck, born in 1744, died in 1829. Lamarck wrote two famous books on zoology, one in 1809 and one in 1815. He was a French atheist. Actually, Kent, it would be more accurate to say that he was a French scientist. He was appointed by the French revolutionary government. He was very bitterly anti-Bible and anti-Christian. He hated the Bible, especially the creation and flood stories. He was determined to give people an alternative explanation for how the earth got here, beside the creation and the flood. Of course he was, Kent. After all, he was a natural scientist. Like most scientists, he wasn't satisfied to say, "Oh yes, how did that happen? God must have done it." I think you'll find that is as true today as it was back then. He also was an immoral man. He had 6 illegitimate children by 3 different women. Don't you just love it the way that Kent seems to bang on about how immoral these people were, and how many illegitimate children they had, yet gives absolutely no account of their great achievements and their contribution to science and mankind and humanity in general. Kent continues. He taught a theory that giraffes had longer necks because they would stretch their necks to reach the leaves higher on the trees. Those that were not able to stretch would simply die out in times of drought. Then the long-necked giraffes would pass on that trait to their children. This is known as the inheritance of acquired characteristics. There is no biologist today that believes this theory. Well, obviously not, because it was wrong. Acquired traits are not inherited because they have no effect on the genetic matter. Lamarck died in poverty and was unwanted when he died. Yes, Kent, but 180 years later, his legacy still lives on strong. Kent moves on to his next target. One of the men greatly influenced by Lamarck was a man named Charles Lyell. Lyell was born in 1797 and died in 1875. He is called the father of modern geology. He was a lawyer, not a scientist. And judging from this, Kent, you're a fraudster and not a doctor. He developed what is called the geologic column. This column is still taught in every earth science classroom today. That, Kent, is because it's correct. The whole idea of the geologic column is based on uniformitarianism, or the present is the key to the past. This is mentioned in 2 Peter 3, where it says, in the last days, scoffers are going to come, and they will say all things continue as they were. Yes, Kent, that idea is based on the fact that if you observe something happening in a particular way today, it is most likely that it also happened in exactly the same way in the past. It goes on to say in 2 Peter 3 that they are willingly ignorant of the creation and the flood. No, Kent, I think you'll find that most people grew up listening to your shit and are therefore rather familiar with the creation story and that of the flood. What has actually happened is these people have decided to reject it because not only is it ridiculous, but there's also no evidence for it either. The flood explains geology. Yes, Kent, but so ineffectually to be in the point of useless. The present processes do not explain geology. Well, actually, Kent, they do. In fact, they do it very well indeed. The Colorado River did not form the Grand Canyon. The Grand Canyon was formed as the flood went down. Were you holding on to Ray Comfort's banana when you wrote that, Kent? Lyell took the old philosophy of naturalism and applied it to Earth history. Sadly, many of the creationists of his day accepted his philosophy. Yes, Kent, we're guessing they looked at his irrefutable evidence and compared it to their 2,000-year-old book written by goat herders and thought, maybe this guy makes a little much more sense than Ahab the Arab and his goats. They thought it was time to update the Bible and somehow make the biblical account of creation include eons of time. Lyell cleverly trapped Christians of his day with his erroneous teachings. No, Kent, he simply proved the Bible wrong. He wrote a book called Principles of Geology. It was this book that influenced Charles Darwin while he was on his voyage on the HMS Beagle many years later. Lyell was Darwin's friend and urged him to publish his book, Origins of the Species. Yes, Kent, Lyell encouraged Darwin to publish his theory before he was pipped to the post by Alfred Russel Wallace.